Natural born men and women, welcome to another episode of Rise of the Black Republican podcast. I am your host, Laurence Haley, the Black Republican, and on today's episode, we're going to get into the State of the Union address, Super Tuesday results, the headline I love, the headline I hate, and of course, the show wouldn't be complete without the absurdity of the week. It's been a wild one, so let's go ahead and get into it. So before we do that, I do want to give a shout out. Had a couple busy weeks here recently. Went to a birthday party for my son, and I'm meeting more and more people who are telling me they're listening to the podcast. So I want to give a shout out to Crystal, her husband, Abraham. I appreciate you guys. Appreciate the support. Continue to listen. I'll keep delivering great content for you. Here we go with the State of the Union. I'm not going to go into too much of the State of the Union. It is what it is. Honestly, it was different than I expected. I was expecting to see the bumbling Biden where he would stumble over his words, and they kept him pretty coherent. He did a good job of talking through his entire speech without fumbling too much. The thing that everyone is saying that you're going to hear, there's two ways of looking at this. There was he was vigorous and he was fired up and he was passionate, or you can say he was just yelling the entire time. It all depends on how you look at it. Honestly, I don't think there was much said of substance that impacted the United States and affected American citizens on their day-to-day. He's made a couple claims that just contradicted each other flat out. He said that he is going to tax corporations and make sure these corporations pay their fair share, so that way no children are starving and that way Americans can afford to eat. And I thought to myself, as he said this, wait a minute, if you're going to tax them more, they're going to raise the prices of their products and services more. So that's going to mean less people are going to eat, unless the government's plan is to take that tax money, roll out some kind of government handout, and provide food for their constituents so that way they can secure more votes. That sounds like a possibility. If he's thinking from that perspective of raising the taxes and to make sure that no kid goes hungry, yeah, that makes sense. Let's see exactly what they're up to. One of the other things he did was he went on this entire rant about chips and snacks. He starts talking about the snack company and shrinkflation, how they're making bags the same size and then putting less chips in the bag, but charging you the same thing. But don't worry, because he's going to stop it. And, just Joe Biden, he gets in there, he yells at you, then, but I'm not going to let him do that. And then whispers like he's whispering into the ear of a 12-year-old girl. So he made that claim. Then he starts talking about Snicker bars, and the Snickers are giving you 10% less Snickers when you open a Snickers bar now. That whole thing was a total mess. And if you rewind to earlier in his speech, he's talking about how Americans pay too much for insulin and diabetics shouldn't pay anything more than $35 a month for their insulin. Well, how about we quit focusing on chips and Snickers bars and focus on the health of Americans, and they won't have to worry about their insulin. They won't have to worry about diabetes. I'm no model of health, I'll be honest. But to quote Joe Biden, come on, man. We're talking about chips and Snickers bars at the State of the Union. Seriously, that's where we're at. The other two things I wanted to discuss was his talk about abortion and the talk about protecting trans people. So these two things, if you really think about what they ultimately do, they are the reduction of your population. I think I've said that before on this podcast, that there is a part of me that believes the abortion movement and the transgender movement are both forms of population control. If you zoom in on abortion, they want to kill babies and kill people before they're born. Number two, with trans, mutilate children's genitals, mutilate people's reproductive organs so they can't have children. These are two methods of population control, because I would ask myself, shouldn't it be in the best interest of a president to increase their population and make their country strong? But no, Joe Biden, the liberal globalist movement, is intentionally trying to make America weak in order to make other countries strong. If we can reduce the population, if we can control the population, and then convince them that it's their idea, or then convince them that, oh no, we're doing this because we want your rights to be protected. We want to protect your rights to kill your babies. We want to protect your rights to damage your bodies. This is a funny one here, because if you think about the contradiction of my body, my right, When it comes to abortion, liberals tout my body, my rights, my body, my rights. But then when it came to vaccines and when it came to wearing masks, oh no, you're not being a team player. But it's my body. It's my right. I don't want to wear a mask. It's my body. It's my right. I don't want to get the jab. So you can't have it both ways. But of course, that's another example of liberal hypocrisy. Now on to something more important. Super Tuesday results. Don't for a second think that just because I'm a conservative, just because I'm Republican, I'm heralding this as a victory for President Trump and the GOP. If you look at some numbers, there's actually a lot of concern around this victory. And here's why it's concerning. If you look back to the Iowa caucus, although Trump won, he won with 51% of the vote. 21% went to Ron DeSantis, another 19% went to Nikki Haley, and lastly, I think like 8% went to Vivek Ramaswamy. If Ron DeSantis drops out, you would think that, okay, that 20% should now swing to President Trump. It didn't, not in all states. Also, with Vivek Ramaswamy, you would think, okay, cool, that 8% should swing to President Trump. And it does appear that that's what happened, because by Super Tuesday, President Trump did get 78% or so of some states' Republican votes, which would be the 20% from Ron DeSantis and then the 8% from Vivek Ramaswamy. But we saw in other states where he did get the victory, but he still won at a very close margin to what he won in Iowa. So places like Colorado, where he got 63% of the vote, Virginia, 63% of the vote, Massachusetts, 59% of the vote, and Utah, 56% of the vote. So what happened there is, even with the absence of Ron DeSantis, the absence of Vivek Ramaswamy, it shows that the people that didn't vote for Trump in some of the states like Iowa still continue to not vote for Trump in the primaries. That's concerning because it makes me ask, were the votes that they gave to Ron DeSantis, were the votes that they gave to Nikki Haley, were they votes against Trump versus votes for that candidate? Because once Vivek dropped out, once Ron dropped out, those votes ended up swinging towards Nikki Haley. So there is a large portion of the GOP Republican Party that will not vote for Trump, and they're going to swing their vote somewhere else. If we come down to another case where it actually is Biden versus Trump, I am concerned that President Trump cannot beat President Biden unless he's actually dead at that point, which who knows if that's a possibility or not. But I don't wish any ill on the president or on his family, but the probability is increasing that he could be replaced just because he won't be fit for office by that point. So regarding Super Tuesday, congrats to the GOP. They got the candidate they want, President Trump. Congratulations. I don't know if that's going to be the right candidate or not to beat Joe Biden, or if that's the right GOP candidate for office in November. We'll see. All right, on to the headline I love. And this one is absolutely perfect. So following up from our last conversation, when I was talking about the government's funding a lot of LGBTQ plus IA things that aren't necessarily government's responsibility, and they're getting involved in too many things. Well, this headline comes to us from Politico, and it's talking about in Philadelphia, in Pennsylvania specifically, Congress decided to drop funding for LGBTQ plus community center after libs of TikTok scorn. Essentially what happened here, I'll read the sub headline here. Senator John Fetterman said the request from his office to drop funding came from his staff without his approval. He implied that a conservative social media account had driven the decision. Here's the story. Lawmakers have stripped a $1 million earmark for an LGBTQ plus community center in Philadelphia from the funding package Congress is expected to clear this week. Senator's office, in a letter to appropriators, requested the funding be cut from the bill, but he said Wednesday that his staff had made the decision to pull the funding without his input, and implied that a conservative social media account, which accused the center of hosting sex parties, had played a part in the decision. This is a quote from Fetterman. I wasn't a part of that decision. It wasn't my personal decision to do that, he said in the interview. I never realized that the libs of TikTok should determine our policies and what we're going to support. I never realized that libs of TikTok should determine our priorities and what we're going to support, referencing a notorious conservative account. Libs of TikTok posted on March 5th that the funding would help a center that promoted a forthcoming event for those interested in BDSM, kink, and fetish, and singled out Senator Bob Casey supporting the funds. Got to read the rest of the article. I'll post a link in the podcast description so you can check it out. But here's the thing. They're not wrong. If you've ever seen a pride parade, they're all dressed up in black leather, whips and chains, BDSM, kink fetish stuff. So that's exactly where this funding would have contributed to. So I'm glad this got shut down. I love this headline. Great job, Libs of TikTok. Fantastic. Love it. Now for the headline I hate. All right. The headline I hate comes to us from USA Today, and it's an opinion piece by a writer named Mike Freeman. The article is, "Hey, Fox News, the gold Trump sneakers are ugly and they won't sway the black vote." To get into this a little bit more and give you some backstory, Donald Trump released a pair of gold Trump sneakers at SneakerCon a couple weeks ago, and the internet's been up in arms about it, saying that this was an appeal to black people. But what I don't like about this article, what I hate about this headline here, is that last piece, the black vote. There is no such thing as the black vote. Black people are dynamic and unique, just like any other vote. You never hear anyone say like, "Whoa, where's the white vote going to go? Is it going to go to Trump or is it going to go to Biden?" No, it goes to both, because white people are unique and dynamic, just like black people are. So I agree that the shoes won't sway black voters, because black voters vote on what's important to them. They vote on their values, whether those are conservative values, Christian values, rural values, inner city values. But to sit here and say it won't sway the black vote is, again, to assume that all blacks vote one way. There would be no different than saying, well, let's see if Joe Biden and his ice cream can sway the white vote. We all know white people love ice cream. Stop. To say that there is a such thing as the black vote is a racist statement, and I hate this headline. The absurdity of the week. Now, I know, usually we use this segment of the show to kind of go tongue in cheek and find something that's kind of silly or just absolutely goofy and talk about that. In today's episode, I do want to get a little bit more serious about the absurdity of the week. Still absurd, still absolutely insane, but this topic needs some attention. At my son's previous school, it's a local school in Arizona, Las Brisas Academy. There is someone on the governing board for the school district who is a transgender male. His name is Paul Bixler. He dresses up like a woman. Actually, he wears his dead spouse's clothes. He's present, obviously, at school board meetings and things like that, but he has never been in the actual school. My wife and I made a commitment to each other that if he did show up in the schools, we were going to pull our sons out of the school immediately, because he's not a teacher. He has no place in the actual classroom. Well, we ended up moving about a year ago, and we're not sending our son to that school anymore. But lo and behold, we just so happen to be scrolling through some social media, and on Las Brisas' Instagram account is none other than Paul Bixler reading stories to third graders. Now, backing some things up and clarifying, he wasn't the only person there reading stories to the children. There were 3 guest readers that were reading stories to these kids. There's 3 different pictures that were posted on the Instagram account. One was of this author who had the Moose and Goose book. They were also playing with 2 puppets. One was a goose, one was a moose, and seemed appropriate. The third picture was of the school principal who was reading a book about a dog, a yellow dog or something like that. You can see it in the picture. The book is facing the camera, and that principal is dressed up like a dog as she reads the book. The second picture was concerning. It is a picture of Paul Bixler, who, again, is a man who dresses up like a woman, also identifies as a woman, prefers to be called she. In Paul's picture, the book is turned sideways, so you can't see what the title of the book is or what the content of the book is. Paul's even positioned sideways, so you don't see a dead forward shot. But in the shot, you can see Paul wearing women's clothes again. He has women's shoes on. He has women's earrings on. And it looks like he might be wearing some type of bedazzled necklace, or maybe he just bedazzled out his lanyard. Me being who I am, I decided to go into the comments and see what's going on there. Mind you, at this point, there's only 3 comments. One was the comment from the actual school themselves, and it read, "So many guest readers surprised us this week with stories. Mrs. Hill is also an author and read her stories to us. Governing board member Paul Bixler stopped by to read to our class, and Cool Dog School Dog, aka Principal Schaefer, took a break from playing ball to share their story." The other 2 comments was one from Polka Dot and Teacups. It said, "We are so lucky to have such amazing guest readers. We love and respect all of them." The next comment was, "You let transgender people read books to our children?" And that was from a parent that attends the school. I decided to hop in and add a couple comments myself. myself, so I decided to go straight at the elephant in the room. I said, ooh, a man who dresses up like a woman who is not a teacher in this school is exposed to young children? Sickening. Wow, Las Brisas. Very disappointed and disgusted. So glad we took our son out of the school this year. Liberals offer nothing but genocide, mutilation, and confusion to the children, not education. I expected more out of Principal Schaefer. Hashtag transgender. Hashtag protect our kids. Now, the things that are concerning about this are, number one, Mrs. Hill is a teacher in the school. So appropriate that she's there reading her stories that she's authored to the kids. Principal Schaefer also is a principal in the school. Appropriate that she's there in the class reading stories to the kids. Paul Bixler is on the school board, not a teacher. So why is he in the classroom with children? If you look at all of the pictures, the first picture has Mrs. Hill with her moose and goose story. And she has a puppet that's a moose, a puppet that's a goose, and she's reading to them with a shirt on that she has that says Moose and Goose on it. The last picture again has the principal reading a book about a dog dressed up, and she's dressed up like a dog. Paul Bixler's book, you can't see what he's reading, but the question becomes, what is he reading that makes him the appropriate person for this story? Because the other two readers' physical theme matches the book that they're reading. Again, Moose and Goose shirt, Moose and Goose book. Cool dog book, cool dog outfit. And then there's Paul Bixler, who you can't see what book he's reading, but we know that he is a man who dresses in women's clothing and is a man and identifies as a transgender woman. So the question is, what was he reading to those children? Is he reading a book about identifying transgender? Is he reading a book that's talking about, you can be whatever you want to be, genders are fluid? Who knows? I don't know. They didn't have this conversation with the parents. I am trying to get to the bottom of it to find out. I have some contacts that are there in the school board and the school district. So we're trying to find out. I'm trying to push this up as far as I can. I started to make some comments on there, and the other parent that was on the comment thread had mentioned that their pastor had been bringing this up and saying that this was taking place in different schools, but she was unaware that it was taking place here in the school that her kids go to. Well, about 30 minutes later, all the comments were locked, and my comments, the concerned parents' comments, were deleted. So if you go to that post now, which I want as many people to see this as possible, go to the IG account is Real Las Brisas ACAD. So that is REALLASBRISASACAD. Real Las Brisas ACAD. Go to that IG account. You can see it for yourself. It's the second picture. You have to swipe in there. But the comments are locked, which really shows that they're in damage control mode. They don't want the bad publicity, and they're trying to hide what they have going on at the school. The other thing I noticed about this post is it had 46 likes at that time. So I said, okay, who in the world is liking this post? So I check out the post, all the likes, right? Every single like on there was a woman, with the exception of 2. So I can't say every single one, but I would say out of 46, 44 of the likes were women. The 2 likes that were from males, one appeared to be the spouse of a teacher. The other one appeared to be a relative of Miss Schaefer, was someone named Scott Schaefer. It got me thinking, here lies the problem. And when they say that all politics are local, this is what's important. We need to be involved in what's going on. Specifically, I am calling for men to get involved in what's going on in their local communities and especially in their schools. I'm curious to see how many fathers don't know that there's a man dressed up like a woman speaking to their third graders, trying to subtly put that in front of them so it becomes acceptable and it becomes quote unquote normal. But we know it's not normal. We know it's absurd and it has to stop. So I am making it one of my missions to get people involved so that way this kind of stuff gets exposed and gets stopped. It's unacceptable. It's very disheartening, to be honest with you, that this is taking place here in Arizona and people didn't know about it. That's my absurdity of the week. I'm not going to go too much further with it because, as you can tell, Papa Bear's getting upset. So we're going to keep it professional. We're going to keep it Christian. We're going to pray this kind of stuff out the school district. But then also, as men, I am asking you to get involved and know what's going on in the school district. Go check out the IG post. It also will be linked on my Instagram account. the Rise of the Black Republican podcast IG account. So you'll be able to see it there if they decide to take this post down altogether. All right, and there you have it. Thank you for listening. If you like what you heard, don't forget to tell a friend. Have them check us out wherever they listen to podcasts. Apple Music, Spotify, YouTube, and more. You've been listening to Rise of the Black Republican podcast, a Team Haley production.